Me and My Luna, sequel to Me and My Alpha. Jenna. The moon hung low over the forest, casting long shadows through the dense canopy. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it the faint scent of something familiar, something Ethan Blackwell thought he'd lost. It had been weeks since the battle for Moonridge, weeks since Lucas's rogues had been driven back into the wild. Peace had returned to the pack, but for Ethan, peace felt hollow. Because Amelia was gone, she had been more than his mate. She was his anchor, his light, and the woman who had stood by his side as Luna of Moonridge. But Lucas's manipulation had fractured their bond, and though Ethan had fought to bring her back, she had slipped through his fingers like smoke in the night. Now, she was out there, lost to him but not gone. Ethan could still feel the bond, faint and fragile, like a distant heartbeat calling to him in the dark, but he wasn't the only one who felt it. Lucas's influence still lingered in the shadows, poisoning Amelia's thoughts, twisting the mate bond Ethan had once thought unbreakable. She was no longer the woman he remembered, and the next time they met she might not see him as her alpha. She might see him as her enemy. But Ethan wasn't about to let that happen. He had made her a promise. To bring her home, no matter the cost. And now, as the moonlit forest stretched endlessly before him, Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was fighting to save his pack. He was fighting to save the woman he loved. Chapter 1. Reunion in the Wild. The moon was still high as the battle around Moonridge began to subside. Ethan stood at the edge of the tree line, his chest heaving, the scent of Amelia still fresh on the wind. The last remnants of Lucas's rogues had scattered, retreating into the dense forest. But Amelia was gone. Again. Ethan's hands curled into fists as he stared into the shadows where she had disappeared. Dane approached cautiously from behind, blood smeared across his arms from the fight. She slipped away with him, Dane said, his voice low. I tried to track her, but she's fast now. Ethan's wolf growled beneath his skin. Of course she was fast. Lucas had made sure of it. She didn't want to fight you, Ethan, Dane continued. I saw the way she hesitated. Whatever Lucas did to her, it's not unbreakable. Ethan exhaled sharply, his eyes still locked on the dark forest. It's not. I felt it too. That flicker of recognition, the briefest glimpse of the woman he loved. It was still there. He wasn't going to let Lucas have her. She's not gone, Ethan said quietly. I'm going after her. Dane's brow furrowed. You sure that's a good idea? Lucas isn't alone. You could be walking into a trap. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, his gaze like stone. It doesn't matter. He would chase her to the ends of the earth if he had to. Hours later, the forest was silent. Ethan tracked her trail through the undergrowth, his senses sharper than ever. Amelia's scent was faint but unmistakable, her wolf stirring something deep within him, pulling him forward. The bond still pulsed softly, a tether that even Lucas hadn't severed completely. Ethan crept along the edge of a rocky ridge, his bare feet moving silently over the forest floor. The trees thinned ahead, opening into a small clearing bathed in moonlight. And there she was. Amelia knelt beside a stream, her reflection shimmering on the water's surface. Her hair fell in loose waves down her back, and the moonlight highlighted the curve of her shoulders. But something was different. Her posture was rigid, and her eyes, those golden eyes, flickered with conflict as she stared at her reflection. Ethan stepped forward carefully, his heart pounding in his chest. Amelia! Her head snapped up, and in an instant she was on her feet, blade already in hand. Ethan held up his hands slowly. "I'm not here to fight." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't attack. The blade lingered at her side, trembling slightly in her grip. "I told you to stay out of my way," she said, though there was a crack in her voice, a hint of hesitation. Ethan took a cautious step closer, feeling the bond tug tighter between them. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. "I know you remember. I saw it on the battlefield." Amelia's jaw clenched, and she shook her head. "You're wrong, Lucas. He showed me everything." The lies. Ethan's heart twisted. "I didn't keep you in the dark to hurt you. I was trying to protect you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Her grip on the blade loosened, just slightly. "And look where that got us." Ethan stepped closer, inch by inch, until there was barely a foot between them. He could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, the flicker of something familiar lingering beneath the surface. "I won't stop fighting for you," Ethan whispered. "Lucas didn't break you, Amelia. Not completely." Her breath hitched, and for a moment he thought she might lower the blade. But then the shadows shifted, and Lucas emerged from the trees behind her. "Amelia," Lucas said smoothly, his voice curling around her like smoke. "You're wasting time." Ethan's eyes locked with Lucas's, and his wolf bristled instantly. Lucas's lips curved into a smug smile. "I warned you, Ethan. She's not yours anymore." Amelia's gaze flicked back to Ethan, her expression clouding. But Ethan wasn't looking at Lucas anymore. His eyes were locked on Amelia, on the bond that still pulsed faintly between them. "She is," Ethan growled, "and I'll bring her back." For a moment, Amelia hesitated, torn between the two men standing before her. Lucas reached out, curling his fingers around her wrist. "Let's go." Ethan's wolf howled inside him as Amelia stepped back, closer to Lucas. But just before she disappeared into the shadows, her gaze flicked to Ethan one last time. A silent promise, and Ethan knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Bond. She was still out there. He could feel it. But Lucas's grip was strong. Dane emerged from the shadows, shifting back to human form as he crossed the clearing. No sign of her. The patrols are stretching further out, but it's like they disappeared into thin air. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands tightening around the arms of his chair. Lucas is smart. He knows how to cover his tracks. Dane hesitated, folding his arms as he studied Ethan carefully. "You're not going to find her by chasing shadows." Ethan's gaze lifted, sharp and unrelenting. "I'm not giving up on her." "I didn't say you should," Dane replied evenly. "But this? It's not just about tracking." Lucas twisted her head. "Even if we find her, she might not want to come back." Ethan's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. He knew that already. Her golden eyes, cold and distant, haunted him. She had stood before him, blade in hand, willing to cut him down. But for one fleeting moment, she had hesitated. That hesitation was all he needed. "She's still in there," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with certainty. "I saw it." Dane sighed. "Then you need to remind her who she really is." Ethan turned to look at him. "You know it's possible," Dane continued. "The bond doesn't just disappear. If she's fighting it, even subconsciously, you can reach her." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know. I just need to make her listen." That night, Ethan sat alone by the fire. His pack slept nearby, recovering from the fight, but Ethereal's thoughts were elsewhere. With Amelia. The bond was weak, but it wasn't gone. If he could strengthen it, if he could break through the wall Lucas had built around her heart, he could bring her back. Ethereal closed his eyes, exhaling deeply as he let his thoughts drift toward her. Memories rose to the surface, warm and bright despite the darkness that surrounded him. He reached for them carefully, pulling each one forward, letting the bond carry the echoes through the space between them. But the first memory was soft. The night he first took Amelia to the cliffs overlooking Moonridge. The stars had burned brightly above them, and the wind had carried her laughter as she stood at the edge, arms spread wide. "You're not afraid of falling?" Ethan had asked, leaning against the rock beside her. Amelia grinned, her hair whipping around her face. "Falling's part of the fun." Ethan had caught her hand gently, pulling her back from the ledge. "I'd prefer if you didn't fall." "I kind of like having you around." She had leaned into him, her fingers trailing down his arm. "I like being around too." The warmth of her hand in his had felt like home. The second memory followed. Stronger, more intimate. The first night she stayed at his cabin, curled beside him beneath a blanket by the fire. Her heart had beat in rhythm with his, and for the first time in years, Ethan had felt peace. "You're warm," she murmured. Half asleep against his chest, he had smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "That's because you steal all the blankets." "I do not," she whispered, tightening her grip on him. "You just like to complain." Ethan let the memory linger, holding on to the feeling of her weight against him. That was who she was. That was who she still could be. As the memories flowed, Ethan's wolf stirred, pushing the bond further. He focused harder, pouring everything he felt for Amelia into that connection. The love, the longing, the ache of her absence. Somewhere, deep in the forest, Amelia woke with a start. Startled, her breath hitched as she sat up in the small cave where Lucas had taken her. The rogue pack slept around her, but Amelia's heart pounded fiercely against her ribs. She had seen him, his face, his touch. The memories had felt so real. Her hand drifted to her neck, fingertips grazing the faint scar where Lucas had bitten her. But the warmth of Ethan's presence lingered faintly, like the echo of a dream she couldn't shake. "Ethan?" she whispered into the dark, the name slipping from her lips before she could stop it. Lucas's eyes opened from across the cave. He watched her carefully, though he said nothing. But he had heard. Back in Moonridge, Ethan's eyes snapped open. The bond thrummed faintly beneath his skin. It was distant, like a candle flickering in the wind. "Love shall not die," he whispered, his heart racing. Dane approached from the tree line, watching him carefully. "Did it work?" Ethan's eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. "She remembered me," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "It's not over." Dane exhaled, nodding. "Then we keep going, until she comes home." Ethan stared into the flames, the bond pulling him forward like a thread leading him to her. Lucas might have turned her against him, but the bond wouldn't break. And now, neither would Ethan. Chapter 3. Internal Divisions. The moon hung low, casting jagged shadows through the forest canopy as Lucas's pack gathered near the base of the ridge. Tension hummed in the air, thicker than the smoke from their dying campfires. Amelia sat near the edge of the clearing, her eyes distant as she listened to the murmurs below. Though no one spoke directly to her, she could feel their glances. Watching. Waiting. She wasn't one of them. Not yet. Lucas's bite had changed her body, but the flicker of Ethan's bond still pulsed faintly beneath the surface, refusing to die. She pressed her fingers against the scar at her neck, as if she could force the bond into silence. It didn't work. "He's losing focus," Darius muttered, pacing near the campfire. His voice was louder than usual tonight, intentionally so. "Lucas brought her back for a reason," Wrecker replied, but there was hesitation in his tone. "Returning her weakens, Ethan. It benefits us." It hasn't weakened him," Darius snapped. "If anything, he's getting stronger. She's a distraction, one we can't afford." Lucas emerged from the darkness, his steps silent as he approached the fire. Darius didn't flinch, even as the Alpha's cold gaze settled on him. "Is there something you'd like to share with the rest of us, Darius?" Lucas's voice was soft, but the threat in it was unmistakable. Darius straightened, arms crossed. "I've been part of this pack since the beginning. I've followed you through every fight, but I see what's happening. The pack is growing weaker, while you waste time on Ethan's mate. You want to break him, but at what cost?" Lucas's eyes narrowed. "Watch your next words carefully." "She's not loyal to you," Darius continued, ignoring the warning. "I smell it on her. Her heart still pulls toward him. This game you're playing, thinking you can rewrite the bond, it's going to get us killed." "I know." A low growl rumbled from Lucas's throat. "She's adjusting. The bond takes time to fade. Or maybe it never will." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Lucas's face. Darius stepped forward, closing the gap between them. "You said we'd crush Ethan, but now we're stuck in the woods, waiting for something that might never happen." "I'm loyal to this pack, Lucas, but if you're leading us off a cliff..." Lucas's hand shot out, gripping Darius's throat in a flash. Darius staggered but held his ground, teeth clenched. "I lead this pack," Lucas growled, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Not you." For a moment, no one moved. The other rogues watched in silence, the crackling of the fire the only sound between them. Finally, Lucas released him, shoving Darius backward. "Fall in line," Lucas warned, "or I'll make an example of you." Darius wiped his mouth, glaring but saying nothing. He turned sharply and disappeared into the trees. Lucas's gaze swept over the rest of the pack. "Anyone else?" No one answered. Later that night, Amelia found Darius alone at the edge of the camp, sharpening his blade under the moonlight. "You're brave," she said quietly, stepping closer. Darius didn't look up. "Or stupid." Amelia leaned against a tree nearby, watching him work. "Lucas doesn't like being questioned, you know that." "Someone has to question him," Darius replied. "Someone has to question him," Lucas added, looking across the tents. Later that night, Amelia found Darius leaning against a tree. Amelia hesitated, her fingers brushing over the edge of the scar Lucas left on her neck. "Do you really think I can't be loyal to him?" Darius stopped, meeting her gaze. "Can you?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. "I don't know," she admitted softly. "I thought I could forget Ethan. I thought Lucas could fix whatever was broken in me." Darius's eyes narrowed. "But he hasn't." Amelia shook her head. "No." For the first time since Lucas had turned her, she felt something stir. A quiet rebellion, the slightest hint of which took away. Darius studied her carefully, lowering his blade. "If you ever decide you're done pretending," he said, "you might not be the only one." His words hung between them, unspoken but understood. Amelia didn't answer, but as she walked away, the weight on her chest felt lighter. At dawn, Lucas stood at the ridge, watching the forest stretch below. Amelia approached cautiously, but Lucas didn't turn. "They're doubting you," she said quietly, testing his reaction. Lucas's grip tightened on the ledge. "They'll fall back in line." "And if they don't?" Lucas finally faced her, his eyes dark with something unreadable. "Then I'll remind them why I lead." Amelia held his gaze, but for the first time, she wasn't sure who she feared more, Lucas or the growing divide within his own pack. Ethan's bond echoed faintly in her chest, and she realized something else. Lucas wasn't just fighting Ethan anymore. He was fighting his own wolves. And she was at the center of it all. Chapter 4: Betrayal Within. The forest was restless. The tension in Lucas's camp spread like wildfire, and Ethan could feel it, a crack splintering the pack from within. Standing at the edge of Moonridge's northern border, Ethan gazed toward the distant ridges where Lucas's rogues lurked. His senses stretched far, listening to the faintest whispers carried by the wind. "She's the wedge," Dane said, stepping beside him. "You felt it too, right? They're starting to turn on him." Ethan's jaw tightened. Lucas thought he could control her, but Amelia's not that easy to break. He could still feel her, the bond flickering faintly, like the last ember of a dying fire. It wasn't gone, and neither was she. Dane crossed his arms, exhaling slowly. "So how do we use this to our advantage?" Ethan's eyes darkened, his wolf stirring beneath the surface. We pull harder." 2 nights later, the moon hung low as Ethan and Dane crept through the underbrush, shadowing the rogue camp from the tree line. The scent of wolves lingered thick in the air, but something else drifted beneath it: uncertainty. Near the campfire below, Darius paced, his expression hard. The other rogues sat quietly, but their eyes followed him, flickering with doubt. Lucas wasn't present, and that absence left space for rebellion. "Darius is the key," Ethan whispered. "He's already questioning Lucas. Now we make sure he doesn't stop." Dane's eyes narrowed. "How?" Ethan's gaze settled on Darius's restless form. "By giving him what he already wants." The next day, Darius left camp at dawn, leading a small patrol along the border. Ethan tracked them from the shadows, careful to keep his presence concealed until they were far enough from Lucas's reach. When the patrol split to check the southern ridge, Ethan stepped onto the path directly behind Darius. Darius's wolf bristled immediately. His hand shot to the blade at his side, but Ethan raised his hands calmly. "I'm not here to fight," Ethan said. Darius froze, his grip tightening around the hilt. "You're trespassing on dangerous ground, Alpha. Lucas will have your head if he finds you here." Ethan smirked. "Maybe, but I think you have bigger problems than me." Darius's eyes narrowed, but he didn't draw the blade. Ethan took a slow step forward. "I know you've been questioning him. You're not the only one." Darius's wolf paced beneath his skin, tension radiating from him. "You don't know anything. I know that Amelia's bond with me hasn't broken," Ethan said, voice lowering. "And I know Lucas is lying to you if he says otherwise." The flicker in Darius's eyes was all Ethan needed. "She still feels it," Ethan continued, driving the wedge deeper. "I can feel her fighting him. And if you're smart, you'll stop fighting for him before it's too late." Darius took a sharp breath, his stance stiffening. "You think you can turn me against him?" Ethan met his gaze evenly. "I don't have to. Lucas is doing that all by himself." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The forest held its breath. Then Darius lowered his hand from his blade. "Get out of here," Darius muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "If Lucas catches you, we'll both be dead." Ethan took a step back, his expression unreadable. "You know where to find me." Darius didn't respond, but his hesitation was loud enough. Back at Moonridge, Dane leaned against the pack house railing as Ethan returned. "So?" Ethan stepped onto the porch, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's starting." Dane's eyes glinted with anticipation. "You think he'll flip?" "He's not loyal to Lucas," Ethan replied. "Not anymore. And that's all we need." Dane grinned faintly. Divide and conquer, huh? Ethan's gaze drifted toward the forest. Lucas is running out of time. The more pressure we apply, the faster his pack will crumble. And when it did, Ethan would be there to take Amelia back. Days passed, and the fractures in Lucas's pack grew wider. Amelia saw it firsthand. The distrust in Darius's eyes, the way the other rogues whispered when Lucas wasn't watching. She wasn't sure what Ethan had done, but she felt it. The shift in the air, the tension that rippled through the pack like a sickness. One evening, Darius approached her at the edge of the camp, his gaze wary. "Lucas trusts you," he said, voice low. "Doesn't he?" Amelia's brow furrowed. "I think so." Darius studied her carefully. "Do you trust him?" She hesitated. Darius's eyes darkened. "I didn't think so." He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Ethan's been circling. He's waiting for the right moment to strike." Amelia's heart skipped. "If you're smart," Darius added, "you'll pick a side before this all comes crashing down." She swallowed hard. "And what side are you on?" Darius's gaze flickered toward the forest, the winning one. That night, Amelia sat by the fire, Lucas beside her. His hand rested casually on her thigh, his touch cold. The pack moved around them, but she could feel the weight of their eyes. Lucas leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "I can feel him trying to reach you," he whispered. Amelia's stomach twisted. "It won't work," Lucas continued, his grip tightening slightly. "The bond between us is stronger now. Ethan's wasting his time." But even as Lucas said the words, Amelia wasn't so sure, because somewhere in the distance she could feel Ethan watching. And part of her wanted him to find her. At the border of Moonridge, Ethan smiled. The cracks were spreading. Lucas's pack was falling apart. Chapter 5. A Wolf Torn Apart. The forest pressed in around Amelia, thick with shadows and the hum of restless wolves. The campfire crackled nearby, but its warmth did little to ease the cold that had settled deep in her chest. She sat alone at the edge of the clearing, knees drawn to her chest, as she gazed into the flickering flames. The others, the wolves Lucas trusted, moved quietly through the camp, but Amelia could feel their unease, their doubt creeping through the pack like a slow poison. She wasn't the only one questioning things. Lucas's touch still lingered on her skin from the night before, but it wasn't comforting. His words echoed in her mind. "The bond with Ethan is gone. You're mine now." But if that were true, why did Ethan's voice still linger in her dreams? The memories had started small, a flash of silver fur in the corner of her vision, the ghost of a laugh she hadn't heard in weeks. Then came the images. Ethan's hand in hers, his lips brushing her forehead, the way his green eyes softened whenever she was near. Amelia's fingers traced the scar on her neck absently, the faint mark Lucas left when he turned her. She had thought the bite would overwrite everything, but it hadn't. The memories came more frequently now, each one sharper than the last. She remembered the way Ethan held her on the cliffs above Moonridge, his arm wrapped around her as the wind whipped through her hair. "You're safe here," he'd whispered. "With me." Amelia squeezed her eyes shut, willing the image to disappear. Safe. The word felt foreign now. "Can't sleep." Amelia's head snapped up at the sound of Lucas's voice. He emerged from the shadows, his blue eyes glinting in the moonlight. She straightened, brushing the dirt from her hands. "I'm fine." Lucas crouched beside her, his gaze sharp as he studied her face. "You've been distant lately." "I'm just tired." Lucas's hand brushed against her cheek, tilting her chin until her eyes met his. The warmth of his skin felt wrong. Too cold, too unfamiliar. "You're not doubting me, are you?" he asked quietly, but there was steel beneath the softness of his words. Amelia forced a smile. Of course not. But even as she said it, she could feel the weight of the lie settling in her chest. Lucas watched her for a long moment before standing. "Good," he said, his voice smooth but distant. "Because we're getting close. Soon Ethan won't be able to reach you anymore." Amelia's stomach twisted as she nodded, though something deep inside her screamed in protest. Lucas lingered for a moment longer before disappearing into the trees, leaving her alone with the flickering fire. As soon as he was gone, Amelia exhaled shakily, pressing her hand over her heart. It wasn't gone. The bond with Ethan, it was still there, faint and fragile but alive, and part of her wanted it to stay. By morning, the forest was alive with movement as Lucas's pack prepared for another patrol. Amelia lingered near the edge of the clearing, watching as Darius barked orders to the younger wolves. Darius's gaze flicked toward her briefly, but he said nothing, his expression unreadable. As Amelia turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "You remember, don't you?" Amelia froze, glancing over her shoulder. "What?" Darius approached slowly, his eyes narrowing as he lowered his voice. "I see it in your face, the way you hesitate. You're not as lost to Lucas as he thinks." Amelia stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Darius smirked faintly. "You do." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You feel him, don't you? Ethan." Amelia's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't respond. "I've been in this pack long enough to know when someone's holding back," Darius continued. "And you? You're not one of us. Not really." Amelia's throat tightened. "I don't belong to Ethan anymore." Darius arched a brow. "Keep telling yourself that." His words cut deeper than she expected. Later that night, Amelia sat by the river that ran along the edge of the camp, her reflection rippling in the water. The moon hung overhead, full and bright, casting silver light across the clearing. She dipped her fingers into the stream, watching as the water flowed around them. A breeze stirred the trees behind her, and for a moment she thought she caught the faintest scent of pine and rain. "Ethan!" Her chest tightened painfully. "I am losing my mind." But when she closed her eyes, he was there. "You never needed to be stronger, Amelia. You were enough just as you were." The memory surfaced unbidden. Ethan's voice, soft and steady, the night he held her beneath the stars. Amelia's hand trembled, and for the first time, she let herself sink into it. She remembered the way his arms had wrapped around her, the way her heart slowed when she was near him. The ache in her chest deepened, and when she opened her eyes, tears burned along her lashes. "What am I doing?" Lucas had told her she was broken, that Ethan had abandoned her. But the bond told a different story. By the time Amelia returned to camp, she felt different. Stronger, more certain. She didn't know how much longer she could pretend, but for now, she had to play along. Lucas still held the upper hand, but he didn't know the truth. Ethan wasn't letting go. And neither was she. Chapter 6. Ethan's Unyielding Love. Lucas stood at the edge of the rogue camp, his eyes burning like cold fire beneath the rising moon. His wolves gathered in silence, but his attention rested solely on Amelia. She stood apart from the others, golden eyes reflecting the light, her blade glinting at her side. "You'll lead this one," Lucas said, his gaze fixed on her. His voice was calm, but the unspoken threat beneath it was sharp as a blade. "Ethan's getting too comfortable," It's time to remind him that you no longer belong to him. Amelia's grip tightened on the hilt of her knife. What if he surrenders? Lucas's eyes narrowed. He won't. And if he does, you'll finish him anyway. The wolves behind her growled their approval, but Amelia remained silent. Lucas stepped closer, his fingers grazing over the scar on her neck. The touch made her stomach twist. I trust you'll do what's necessary. Don't disappoint me. Amelia swallowed hard, forcing a nod. Good, Lucas whispered, his lips brushing the edge of her ear. When this is over, he'll be nothing but a memory. But Ethan was already more than a memory. No matter how hard she tried to drown it, the bond still pulsed faintly beneath her skin, and Lucas felt it too. The attack came at dusk. Moonridge lay quiet under the fading light, but Ethan felt them coming long before the first howl pierced the sky. He stood at the edge of the pack's border, his breath steady, heart thundering beneath the surface. He knew this would happen. He'd been waiting for it. Dane shifted beside him, his fur bristling as he snarled at the approaching shadows in the trees. More of them this time, he growled. Lucas is done playing games. Ethan didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the figures emerging from the forest. Wolves in human form spread out, circling Moonridge like vultures. At their center, Amelia. His chest tightened at the sight of her. She was a vision of deadly beauty, wild and untouchable, her blade gleaming in the fading light. But her eyes, they weren't cold like the others. They were conflicted. She's leading them, Dane said, his voice low. You know what that means. Ethan's gaze softened. I know. Dane's wolf shifted uneasily. If she comes for you, she won't. Dane shot him a sharp look. You sure about that? Ethan exhaled slowly. I have to be. The battle began with a blur of motion. Lucas's wolves charged, their forms shifting as they collided with Ethan's pack. Snarls filled the air. Claws fought beneath the rising moon. Ethan moved swiftly, intercepting rogue after rogue, but his focus never left Amelia. She stood at the center of the chaos, unmoving, waiting for him. When their eyes finally met across the clearing, everything else faded away. Amelia stepped forward, raising her blade. The wolves around her paused, retreating to form a wide circle, as if sensing the storm about to unfold. Ethan shifted back to human form, breathing heavily as he lowered his hands at his sides. I'm not fighting you, Amelia, he said, voice steady but filled with quiet pain. Amelia's hand trembled, but she didn't lower the blade. You don't have a choice. I'm fighting, Amelia protested. He took a slow step toward her. Yes, I do. Her eyes darkened. You think you can reach me, Ethan? Lucas was right. You're a fool. His lips curved into a faint smile. Then let me be a fool. Amelia's grip tightened, but her steps faltered. I should kill you where you stand. Ethan held his ground, standing just a few feet away now, close enough to feel the faint hum of the bond still tethering them. You won't, he whispered. Her hand trembled more violently, the blade wavering between them. Why? She demanded, voice cracking. Why don't you fight me? Ethan's eyes softened, and he reached up slowly, his fingertips brushing the edge of her scar, the one Lucas left behind. Because I love you, he said simply. I always will. Amelia's breath hitched. Her wolf stirred beneath the surface, clawing at the walls Lucas had built around her heart. I remember you, she whispered, eyes flickering with something fragile. But it's different now. I'm different. Ethan stepped closer, his forehead almost touching hers. You're not different. You're still Amelia. And no matter what Lucas says, I know you feel this. Our bond. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I don't know how to stop him, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's thumb brushed the tear away, his touch lingering against her skin. You don't have to, he said softly. I'll fight for both of us. Her blade lowered, the tension in her shoulders finally breaking. But before Ethan could pull her closer, a low growl echoed from the tree line. Lucas stepped into the clearing, his eyes narrowing at the sight before him. Amelia, he said sharply, his voice coiled with fury. What are you doing? Amelia stiffened, the haze of their bond flickering beneath Lucas's commanding gaze. Come here, Lucas ordered, his eyes flashing gold. Ethan's wolf bristled, but he didn't move. This wasn't his fight anymore. Amelia's gaze flickered between them, torn between the man she once loved and the alpha who had marked her. But as Lucas stepped closer, something shifted. Amelia's eyes narrowed. No, Lucas's expression darkened. What did you say? Amelia stepped protectively in front of Ethan, her shoulders squaring. I said no. Lucas's gaze turned sharp, but for the first time, there was uncertainty behind it. You'll regret that, he growled, but Amelia's grip tightened around her blade. Maybe, but I'll take my chances. As Ethan's hand found hers, she felt the bond surge stronger, a force no bite could break. Lucas might have twisted her mind, but her heart remembered. And, for the first time in weeks, Amelia felt like herself again. Chapter 7. A Fragile Breakthrough. The moon was high, its light filtering through the canopy of trees as Amelia sat alone by the river that snaked along the edge of Lucas's camp. The sounds of the wolves behind her faded into the background, leaving only the soft rustle of the wind and the distant murmur of water against the rocks. Her blade rested across her lap, but her hands trembled as they brushed the metal. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, the way he had stood before her, refusing to fight. Because I love you. The words echoed in her mind, unraveling the walls she had built to contain them. Lucas's voice told her to forget Ethan, to bury the bond they once shared, but it was still there, persistent, aching, and every time she closed her eyes, it resurfaced. Amelia squeezed the blade tighter. Why couldn't she shake him? You hesitated. Lucas's voice broke through the stillness, sending a chill down Amelia's spine. She hadn't heard him approach, but there he was, standing behind her, watching her with piercing blue eyes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. She masked her uncertainty quickly, straightening her shoulders as she stepped closer, his presence suffocating. She whispered a word to him as he looked at her, watching his gaze. Lucas's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer. She masked her ingredients. I saw you on the battlefield. You could have ended him. Amelia gripped the knife harder. He didn't fight back. Lucas crouched beside her, his gaze softening in that way it always did when he sensed doubt. His hand brushed over the scar on her neck, a possessive reminder of the bond he forced upon her. That's Ethan's weakness, Lucas whispered, his voice curling around her like smoke. He's too soft when it comes to you. But that softness will destroy him, and you, if you let it. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. You belong here now. Lucas continued, his thumb trailing down her jawline. With me, let him go. She wanted to nod, to let Lucas's voice drown out the conflict raging inside her. But when she looked at him, all she could see was Ethan standing in the clearing, broken but unwilling to give up on her. She pulled away, rising to her feet. I need air. Lucas's eyes darkened slightly, but he nodded. Don't stray too far. I won't. But as Amelia stepped away from him, the doubt in her chest grew louder. All hours later, Amelia wandered the edge of camp, the forest stretching endlessly ahead of her. She traced her fingers along the scar on her neck, her heart heavy. The bond Lucas forced on her should have wiped out everything else, but it hadn't. The memories of Ethan hadn't faded. If anything, they grew stronger. Amelia. Her head snapped up at the sound of her name, and her heart stilled. Ethan emerged from the shadows, standing just beyond the camp's perimeter, his eyes glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. Her breath caught. Why did he keep coming back? You shouldn't be here, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The camp wasn't far. If Lucas sensed him, if he found out. But Ethan didn't move. I had to see you, he said, his voice calm but filled with quiet intensity. I know you feel it too. Amelia's heart twisted painfully. I can't. Lucas will... I don't care about Lucas. His words startled her into silence. You're not his, Ethan said, stepping closer, his gaze soft but unwavering. No matter what he's told you, Amelia swallowed hard, taking a shaky step back. You don't know what it's like, Ethan. The bond, it pulls at me. It's different now. Ethan's eyes didn't waver. Then why are you out here alone? She opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Ethan took another step forward, and the space between them felt too small, too intimate. You are not lost, Amelia, he whispered. You've just forgotten who you are. Her pulse quickened. Ethan reached for her hand slowly, as if afraid she might pull away. When their fingers brushed, a spark jolted through her. The mate bond. Stronger than before, Amelia gasped softly, the warmth of the connection burning away some of the cold Lucas had wrapped around her. It hadn't faded. I remember you, she whispered, voice trembling. Ethan's thumb brushed over her knuckles, grounding her. Then come back to me. Tears burned along the edges of her eyes. I can't. He'll know. I'll keep you safe, Ethan said, his voice steady, unwavering. You know I will. Amelia's grip tightened around his hand, but fear coiled tightly in her chest. Before she could respond, a branch snapped behind them. Ethan's wolf bristled, and Amelia stiffened. Lucas's scent drifted on the wind. You have to go, she whispered urgently, pulling away from him. Amelia... Go, she hissed, shoving him toward the tree line just as Lucas's form materialized between the shadows. Lucas's eyes narrowed immediately, locking onto Ethan like a predator spotting prey. What are you doing here? Lucas growled, his voice sharp. Ethan's shoulders squared, but he didn't move. I was just leaving, he replied calmly, his gaze lingering on Amelia for a fraction of a second longer before he disappeared into the trees. Lucas's eyes snapped to Amelia, suspicion burning in them. What did he say to you? Her hand still tingled where Ethan had touched her, and for the first time, she let herself hope. The bond wasn't gone, and maybe, just maybe, she could find her way back to him. Chapter 8. The Full Moon Clash. The full moon hung like a silver blade over Moonridge, its light slicing through the darkness that pressed heavy over the forest. The air crackled with tension, each breath thick with the weight of the inevitable. Ethan stood at the center of the clearing, his pack gathered beneath the moonlight. Dane flanked his side, his wolf pacing restlessly beneath the surface. They're coming, Dane muttered, sniffing the air. Lucas isn't backing down this time. Ethan's gaze remained locked on the tree line, his senses sharp. He wasn't worried about Lucas. He was waiting for her. The bond throbbed faintly in his chest, like a thread stretched taut, but not broken. Amelia was close. He could feel her moving toward him, each step filled with hesitation and conflict. "She's still in there," Ethan said quietly. Dane glanced at him, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You sure about that? Because last time she held a blade to your throat." "She didn't kill me," Ethan replied, his voice firm. "Maybe next time she won't hesitate," Dane shot back. Ethan's eyes hardened. "She will, because even if she had forgotten, he hadn't." The first howl shattered the silence. From the darkness, shadows emerged. Wolves, shifting mid-stride, their forms sleek and lethal beneath the moonlight. Lucas led them, his eyes glowing like twin coals as he strode into the clearing. Behind him, Amelia followed, her golden gaze flickering like firelight in the night. Ethan's heart twisted painfully at the sight of her. She moved like one of Lucas's wolves, silent, deadly. But there was a stiffness to her posture, a hesitation in her eyes that Lucas couldn't erase. The pack behind Ethan growled low, the sound vibrating through the clearing. "Ethan Blackwell," Lucas called out, his voice echoing through the trees. "I warned you this would happen. Surrender Moonridge, and I'll spare your wolves." Ethan took a step forward, his shoulders squared. "I told you before, Lucas. You'll have to go through me first." Lucas's lips curled into a smirk. "I was hoping you'd say that." His wolves surged forward, snarling as they charged. Ethan's pack responded instantly, colliding with the rogues in a blur of fur and claws. The clearing erupted into chaos, but Ethan's focus remained fixed on one figure. Amelia. She moved toward him, blade gleaming in her hand. Their eyes met across the battlefield. "Amelia," Ethan called out, his voice cutting through the clash of wolves. She hesitated mid-step, the bond flickering faintly between them. Lucas's sharp gaze flicked to her. "Finish him!" Amelia's grip tightened on the hilt of her blade. For a moment, Ethan thought she might listen. But then her gaze softened, just for a breath. Ethan stepped toward her slowly, lowering his arms. "You don't have to do this." Amelia's hand trembled. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. "You do," Ethan said gently, his voice threading through the bond. "You're Amelia. You're my mate." Tears pooled along the edges of her eyes, but she didn't lower the blade. Behind her, Lucas's expression twisted into a snarl. "She's not yours anymore," Lucas growled, striding forward. "She chose me." "No," Ethan replied, his eyes never leaving Amelia's. "You forced her." Lucas lunged without warning, shifting mid-air as he aimed for Ethan's throat. But Amelia moved first. Her blade flashed in the moonlight, slicing through the space between them, not toward Ethan, but toward Lucas. A silver edge grazed Lucas's side, forcing him to stumble back with a snarl of surprise. Amelia stepped in front of Ethan, her shoulders rising and falling heavily. Her chest heaved as she gripped the blade, her knuckles white. "You don't control me," she said, her voice trembling but unyielding. Lucas's eyes narrowed, rage flickering beneath the surface. "You think he'll save you?" he spat. "You'll still mine." "No," Amelia said softly, the bond between her and Ethan glowing stronger. "I never was." Lucas lunged again, but Ethan met him mid-stride, shifting seamlessly into his wolf form. Their bodies collided with a thunderous crack, silver and black fur intertwining in a vicious dance beneath the moon. Snarls echoed through the clearing as the two alphas battled for dominance, claws tearing through flesh and fur. Amelia watched, heart pounding, as Ethan's silver wolf sank his teeth into Lucas's shoulder, driving him to the ground. Lucas shifted back, blood dripping from his mouth as he staggered to his feet, his chest rising and falling raggedly. His gaze flicked to Amelia, but the bond between her and Ethan shone like a barrier between them. "You're a fool," Lucas spat, retreating toward the tree line. "She's broken. She'll never be the same," he said, his voice steady. "She doesn't have to be the same," he said, his voice steady but fierce. Tom said, "The closer you get, the closer I get affection. We're getting out of here. Pain's not really the ocean." Lucas' gaze darkened. The hidden force of the battle lifted. The clearing fell silent. Amelia stood frozen, her breath trembling as the weight of the battle lifted. The other rogues had fled, leaving only the Moonridge pack standing. Ethan approached her slowly, his eyes soft as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You came back to me," he whispered. Amelia's tears slipped free, and she leaned into him, pressing her forehead to his. "I never left," she murmured. "I just forgot how to find you." Ethan's arms wrapped tightly around her, pulling her close as the bond between them flared to life, stronger, brighter than ever before. Lucas's influence was gone, his claim broken. And under the light of the full moon, Amelia found her way back home, settled into her new life, in Bethel, Corpus Christi, California. Chapter 9. The Weight of the Alpha. The forest lay still in the aftermath of the battle. Moonridge had held its ground, but the victory felt hollow. Ethan stood at the edge of the pack's land, his gaze fixed on the tree line where Amelia had disappeared hours earlier. She had come back to him, if only for a moment, but as soon as the battle ended, she slipped away, leaving him with nothing but the faint echo of their bond. Dane approached quietly, standing beside Ethan in silence for a long moment. The familiar presence of his beta should have been comforting, but Ethan felt the weight pressing harder against his chest. "She's still out there," Ethan muttered. Dane nodded. "I know." "I could have stopped her," Ethan continued, his voice tight. "I should have." Dane exhaled. "Stopping her isn't the same as saving her, Ethan, you know that." Ethan's hands curled into fists at his sides. His wolf wanted to chase after her, to bring her home by force if necessary. But something held him back. Something deeper than instinct. "She's not the same," Ethan admitted, his voice quieter now. "I saw it in her eyes. Lucas left scars I don't know how to heal." Dane shifted, crossing his arms. "She's not broken. She's just lost, like you were once." Ethan's gaze flicked to him, but Dane's expression was unreadable. "You forget," Dane added. "I was there when you almost gave up after your father died. I remember how long it took for you to find your way back to the pack. No one could pull you out of it except yourself." Oh, Ethan's throat tightened. He rarely spoke about that part of his past. "I'm not giving up on her," Ethan said firmly. "I know," Dane replied. "But you can't force her to come back. That's not how this works." Ethan didn't answer. After a long silence, Dane finally stepped back. "Talk to Elder Rowan. He's waiting for you." Ethan turned, confusion flickering across his face. "Now?" Dane's eyes narrowed slightly. His eyes wandered to the battle. "Go." The elder's cabin sat on the far side of the village, tucked away beneath a grove of ancient trees. Ethan found Rowan outside, tending to a small fire pit. The old wolf sat cross-legged, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of the flames. Rowan's gaze lifted as Ethan approached. "You came." "I heard you wanted to speak with me," Ethan replied, stepping forward. Rowan gestured to the log across from him. "Sit." Ethan lowered himself onto the rough wood, the fire crackling quietly between them. Rowan studied him for a long moment, his eyes sharp despite his age. "The pack feels your strength, Ethan. But they also sense your doubt." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm not doubting myself." Rowan arched a brow. "Aren't you?" Ethan met his gaze but said nothing. Rowan's voice softened. This isn't just about Amelia, it's about what happens if you lose her. What happens to you, and to the pack. Ethan looked away, staring into the fire. I'm not afraid to lose her, Ethan said quietly. Rowan tilted his head. A lie, even to yourself, is still a lie. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands resting on his knees. I don't know how to save her, he admitted, the weight of the words settling over him like an anchor. Every time I get close, she slips away, and He stopped, forcing down the knot rising in his throat. Rowan's gaze didn't waver. You're afraid that if you can't bring her back, the bond will break. Ethan's chest tightened. Yes. The elder nodded slowly, tossing a small bundle of herbs into the fire. The flames hissed, a thin wisp of smoke curling into the air. There's a story, Rowan began, his voice distant, about the first alpha of Moonridge. His mate was taken from him during the war with the Eastern Packs. He searched for months, tearing through their lands. When he found her, she no longer remembered him. The Eastern wolves had twisted her mind, erased the bond. Ethan listened intently, hanging on every word. What did he do? Ethan asked. Rowan smiled faintly. He let her go. Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. He just left her? No, Rowan replied, his voice calm. He waited, and in time, she found her way back to him. On her own. Ethan frowned, leaning forward. What are you saying? Rowan met his gaze, the firelight dancing in his eyes. You can't fight her battles for her, Ethan. She has to break free of Lucas's influence herself. The more you chase, the further she'll run. Ethan's shoulders slumped slightly. I can't stand by and do nothing, Ethan muttered. You're not, Rowan said. You're giving her space to remember who she is. Trust the bond, Ethan. It hasn't failed you yet. Ethan let the elder's words settle in his mind. Rowan's gaze softened. You carry the weight of this pack, Ethan. But love is not a battlefield. You can't win this by force. Ethan nodded slowly, the fire crackling between them. Later that night, Ethan returned to the pack house. Dane met him at the door, concern flickering in his eyes. What did you say? Ethan's gaze drifted toward the forest, where Amelia's scent lingered faintly. He told me to wait, Ethan replied. Dane frowned. That's not your style. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. No, it's not. But as he stepped inside, Ethan felt lighter, as if the weight on his chest had shifted. Amelia wasn't gone. She was finding her way back. And when she did, he would be waiting. Chapter 10. Lucas's True Colors. The forest surrounding Lucas's camp grew colder with each passing day, the chill settling into the bones of those who followed him. The rogues kept their heads down, wary and silent, but tension rippled beneath the surface like a crack, ready to split wide. Amelia felt it too. She sat by the fire in the heart of camp, sharpening her blade with slow, deliberate movements. Wolves moved around her, their eyes lingering just a little too long. They were watching her, judging her. It had been days since the battle at Moonridge, since she stood before Ethan and chose not to strike him down. Lucas hadn't mentioned it. Not yet. But his gaze had been colder, sharper. He was waiting. Amelia. Lucas's voice drifted from behind her. She straightened immediately, masking the unease tightening in her chest. She turned to face him, nodding in greeting. Lucas. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, studying her as if peeling back layers she didn't want him to see. Come with me. Amelia rose silently, tucking the blade at her side as she followed him toward the ridge overlooking the camp. The clearing stretched beneath them, dotted with wolves sharpening weapons and preparing for the next strike. Lucas stood at the edge, gazing out over the pack with the satisfaction of a king surveying his kingdom. But Amelia wasn't so sure the kingdom was his anymore. "I gave you a simple task," Lucas said, without turning. His voice was calm. Too calm. "And yet Ethan still stands." Amelia's hand tightened around the hilt of her knife. "You told me to destroy him," she replied carefully. "But he didn't fight back. It wasn't necessary." Lucas's eyes narrowed, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the rock beside him. "Necessary?" He turned slowly, his gaze burning into her. "Ethan is alive because you hesitated. Don't mistake mercy for strength." Amelia met his gaze, forcing herself not to flinch. "Killing him won't strengthen the pack. It'll only provoke more bloodshed." Lucas's expression shifted into something darker. "Is that what you think?" Her heart pounded, but she held firm. "You don't understand," Lucas growled, stepping closer. "Ethan's weakness infects his pack. You saw it? You felt it." "I felt the bond," Amelia said, her voice quieter now. "And it hasn't broken." Lucas's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with a force that made her wince. His eyes flared with barely contained rage. "I broke that bond the day I turned you," Lucas hissed, his grip tightening. "Ethan is nothing to you now." Amelia's pulse raced. "Then why does it still pull at me?" Lucas's jaw tensed. His fingers dug deeper into her skin, but before either of them could speak, a voice drifted from behind. "You're slipping, Lucas." Amelia's head snapped to the side as Darius emerged from the shadows of the trees, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. Lucas didn't release her wrist immediately. His eyes narrowed at Darius, the muscles in his jaw flexing. "You have something to say, Darius?" Lucas asked, coldly. Darius's gaze flicked to Amelia's wrist, then back to Lucas. "We all saw what happened at Moonridge. She could have killed Ethan. She didn't. Maybe you should be asking yourself why." Amelia's heart twisted painfully, but she said nothing. Lucas's fingers loosened as he turned fully toward Darius, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Careful, Darius, you're treading on thin ice." Darius smirked faintly. "Am I? Or is the ice cracking beneath all of us?" A few wolves nearby slowed their movements, their ears twitching as they overheard the exchange. Lucas's gaze flicked to them, his lip curling. Amelia could feel it, the shift in the air. Darius took another step forward, his voice calm but loud enough for the others to hear. "You keep telling us Ethan's pack is weak," Darius continued, "but the only one I've seen hesitating lately is you. Maybe Ethan's not the problem. Maybe it's your obsession with her." Lucas's wolf bristled, flickering dangerously close to the surface. "You think I'm obsessed?" Lucas growled, stepping dangerously close to Darius. "I'm building something stronger, something Ethan won't survive." Darius's gaze hardened. "Or maybe you're just scared." Silence blanketed the camp. The other wolves watched cautiously, their eyes flicking between Lucas and Darius, like predators circling a wounded animal. Amelia's heart pounded. She could feel the tension snapping like frayed wires, the pack slowly turning on itself. Lucas's eyes flashed gold, his wolf pressing hard beneath the surface. But he didn't shift. Not yet. Instead, he smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. "Don't forget your place, Darius," Lucas said softly. "You serve at my command. That hasn't changed." Darius's jaw tightened, but he stepped back, nodding stiffly. "Of course." But as Darius walked away, his gaze lingered on Amelia, just long enough to send a silent message. He wasn't the only one questioning things. Later that night, Amelia sat alone by the fire, Her hand drifted to the scar on her neck, her mind spinning. Lucas's grip on the pack was slipping. And he knew it. Darius wasn't the only wolf doubting him. Amelia could see the fractures growing with each passing day. Lucas was no longer just fighting Ethan. He was fighting his own pack. And for the first time since Lucas turned her, Amelia wondered if she was standing on the wrong side. She didn't know how long she sat there, but when she finally looked up, Ethan's wolf lingered just beyond the tree line. His green eyes met hers, calm, steady. The bond between them thrummed softly, as if reaching out. Amelia's breath caught. For the first time, she didn't look away. Chapter 11. Amelia's breaking point. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. The night stretched endlessly around the rogue camp, but Amelia couldn't sleep. She sat beneath a twisted oak, watching the flicker of the dying fire as shadows stretched across the ground. The bond between her and Ethan pulsed faintly, like a distant heartbeat she couldn't ignore. No matter how hard she tried to bury it, it kept resurfacing. Lucas's words echoed in her mind. I broke that bond the day I turned you. But had he? Because when she closed her eyes, she didn't feel Lucas's bite or his mark. She felt Ethan. His warmth, his voice, his steady, unwavering love. And it terrified her. By dawn, Lucas summoned the pack for another attack on Moonridge. Amelia stood at the edge of the gathering, arms crossed as Lucas paced before them, his icy blue eyes flicking over each wolf like a general preparing his soldiers for war. Ethan's pack is vulnerable, Lucas announced, his voice echoing sharply through the trees. The more we press, the weaker they become. This ends soon. Darius, standing with his arms folded, watched Lucas with careful eyes. Fading doubt in him was spreading, and Amelia wasn't the only one who noticed. Amelia! Lucas's gaze snapped to her, pulling her forward. The pack's eyes followed, their weight heavy on her shoulders. You'll lead this one, Lucas said smoothly, his expression unreadable. Ethan trusts you, use that. A cold pit settled in her stomach. She nodded without speaking, but as she stepped back, her pulse quickened. Lucas wasn't just testing Ethan, he was testing her too. The attack came swiftly. Amelia led a small group of rogues through the dense underbrush, circling Moonridge's border. The pack lay quiet beneath the rising sun, but she knew Ethan was already aware of them. He was waiting. As the first rogue stepped into the clearing, a flash of silver fur erupted from the trees. Ethan's wolf. The rogue barely had time to react before Ethan intercepted him, driving him back with powerful strikes. More wolves burst from the shadows, snarls ripping through the air as the two packs collided. Amelia hung back, blade drawn but untouched by the fighting. Her eyes found Ethan immediately. His wolf tore through the chaos, but when their eyes met across the battlefield, he stopped. He didn't shift back. He didn't raise his claws. He just watched her. The bond between them pulled tight, and for a moment, it was just the two of them standing in the clearing, the world fading away. Amelia, Ethan said, his voice low and rough as he shifted to human form. You don't have to do this. Her grip on the blade trembled. Come back to me, Ethan interrupted softly. You're still mine, Amelia. Lucas didn't break the bond. Ah, Lucas. Tears stung the edges of her eyes, but she held them back, forcing her expression into something colder. Lucas says I belong to him now. Ethan took a step closer. Do you believe that? She hesitated, and that moment, that hesitation, was her breaking point. The weight of Lucas's manipulation, his control, pressed harder against her chest. But Ethan's words were soft, wrapping around her like a lifeline, pulling her from the dark. "I remember the night you stayed at my cabin," Ethan continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You told me I made you feel safe. That hasn't changed, Amelia. I'm still here. I'm still fighting for you." Her blade lowered an inch. "You don't have to fight him alone," Ethan whispered. "Come home." The dam inside her finally broke, and it clattered softly to the ground. Her legs shook beneath her, but before she could fall, Ethan crossed the clearing and caught her. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest. The moment their bodies touched, the bond flared back to life, stronger and brighter than ever before. Amelia gasped, tears slipping freely down her cheeks as the overwhelming warmth of the connection flooded through her. She had forgotten how much she missed it. Missed him. "I'm sorry," Amelia whispered against his shoulder, her fingers curling into his shirt. "I tried to let him erase it, but I couldn't." Ethan's arms tightened around her, his voice rough with emotion. "You don't have to apologize. You're here now." The sounds of battle faded as the rogues who had followed her began pulling back, watching with uncertain eyes. Darius lingered at the edge of the clearing, observing the exchange with a flicker of understanding. He gestured for the others to retreat, leaving Amelia and Ethan standing alone in the clearing. By the time the battle ended, Amelia remained by Ethan's side. The Moonridge wolves didn't question it. As they walked back to the pack house, Ethan's hand lingered in hers, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles. "Lucas won't stop," Amelia said quietly, her gaze lowered. "He'll see this as a betrayal." Ethan nodded. "I'm scared," she admitted. Ethan slowed, turning to face her beneath the trees. He lifted her chin gently, his eyes soft but unwavering. "You don't have to be," he said. "Not as long as I'm standing beside you." Amelia swallowed the lump in her throat, nodding as she leaned into him. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, stitching together the cracks Lucas had left behind. She was home. Chapter 12. Lucas's Downfall. The wind carried the scent of smoke and pine as Amelia stood at the edge of Moonridge, staring into the thick forest where Lucas's camp lay hidden. The sun hung low, bleeding orange light over the treetops, but no warmth reached her. Ethan stood beside her, his hand brushing against hers. Not a command, just a quiet reminder that he was there. That he trusted her. Behind them, Dane and the rest of the pack waited, ready for the inevitable. They knew this wasn't just another battle, this was the end. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked quietly. Amelia didn't hesitate. "I have to be." Lucas had stolen her memories, twisted her thoughts, and used her as a weapon against the only man she'd ever loved. Tonight, it ended. The rogue camp lay cloaked in silence as Amelia stepped into the clearing. Lucas sat by the fire, his back straight, his piercing eyes flicking toward her as if he had been expecting her return. Darius stood nearby, sharpening his blade, though his focus lingered on Amelia's every move. "Amelia," Lucas greeted, his voice smooth but calm. "You came back." She stopped a few feet away, keeping her posture rigid but calm. "I didn't come to stay." Lucas's smile faded. "I see." His gaze drifted over her shoulder, scanning the forest behind her. "Where's Ethan? Surely you didn't come alone." "I did." Lucas arched a brow, rising slowly. "That's brave." His eyes narrowed. "Or foolish." Her pulse quickened, but she didn't let it show. "I wanted to speak to you alone." Lucas stepped closer, circling her like a predator stalking prey. The air grew heavy, his wolf pressing hard against the surface. "Well?" he asked, voice dipping lower. Amelia met his gaze evenly. "To give you a chance to walk away." Lucas stopped, his head tilting as if he hadn't heard her correctly. Darius glanced up, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips, but he said nothing. "You think I'll walk away?" Lucas's voice was calm, but the undercurrent of rage was unmistakable. "You forget, Amelia, you belong to me." Amelia's eyes flashed gold, her wolf rising beneath her skin. "No, Lucas, I never did." Lucas's gaze hardened. Amelia took a step forward, the tension snapping tight between them. "You tried to erase the bond between me and Ethan, but you failed. I feel it now, stronger than ever. And so does your pack." Lucas's eyes flicked briefly toward Darius, who met his gaze without flinching. "I led them into battle for you," Amelia continued, her voice unwavering. "But they didn't follow because they trusted you. They followed because they were afraid of you." Lucas's fists clenched at his sides. "You're losing control," Amelia pressed, her heart pounding. "And they know it. Darius knows it. That's why they hesitate." Lucas turned sharply, his cold gaze locking onto Darius. "Is that true?" Darius lifted his blade, testing the edge with his thumb. "I didn't say a word." Lucas's jaw tightened. "But you thought it." The fire crackled between them, but no one spoke. The silence stretched painfully thin, and Amelia could see the doubt spreading through the rogues like wildfire. Lucas stepped forward, his focus snapping back to her. "You think turning them against me will save you?" he growled, his wolf bleeding into his voice. "You think Ethan will protect you when this is over?" Amelia's hand shifted to the hilt of her knife, but she didn't draw it. "I don't need him to protect me." Lucas's lip curled into a snarl. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," Amelia said softly, her eyes locking onto his. For the first time, Lucas hesitated. That single crack in his armor was all she needed. The first blow came fast. Lucas lunged, shifting mid-stride as his claws slashed toward Amelia. She sidestepped, driving her blade into his side with a twist, forcing a snarl of pain from his throat. Darius didn't move. Neither did the other rogues. Lucas staggered back, shifting fully into his wolf form, a massive black beast, his fur bristling with rage. Amelia shifted too, her silver wolf stepping forward, muscles coiled as she bared her teeth. Lucas lunged again, but this time Amelia met him head-on. Their bodies collided, claws ripping through fur as they tumbled across the clearing, in a blur of silver and black. Lucas snapped at her throat, but she twisted free, slashing her claws across his flank. Blood splattered the ground, but he didn't relent. As the battle raged, the rogue wolves watched in silence. Darius's eyes narrowed as he observed the fight. The cracks in Lucas's leadership had been growing for weeks, but tonight they shattered. Lucas wasn't fighting for the pack. He was fighting for himself, and no wolf fought a leader who fought out of fear. The battle ended with Lucas pinned beneath Amelia's claws. Her fangs hovered above his throat, his chest heaving beneath her weight. Blood stained his black fur, but his eyes still burned with defiance. "Do it," Lucas snarled. Amelia hesitated. Her wolf growled low, but she didn't strike. "This isn't the way," she whispered, stepping back as she shifted to human form. "I won't become you." Lucas stared at her, panting heavily, as he shifted back. His body trembled, blood streaking his skin, but he didn't rise. Darius finally stepped forward, standing over him, with his blade still in hand. "You've lost, Lucas," Darius said flatly. "It's over." Lucas's eyes flicked between them, realization settling into his features. He wasn't the alpha anymore. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Lucas was gone. The rogues who remained swore loyalty to Darius. and the camp slowly began to disperse. Amelia stood at the edge of the clearing, her body aching, but lighter than it had felt in weeks. Ethan emerged from the trees, his eyes soft as they met hers. "You did it," he said quietly. Amelia exhaled, brushing her hair back from her face. "I didn't do it alone." Ethan stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her as the bond between them pulsed gently. She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest. Lucas was gone, and, for the first time in what felt like forever, Amelia was free. Chapter 13. Returning Home. The path back to Moonridge felt longer than Amelia remembered. The forest stretched endlessly around her, the towering trees familiar, yet foreign at the same time. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of Lucas's influence still clung to her skin. Ethan walked beside her in silence, his presence steady and grounding. He hadn't let go of her hand since they left the rogue camp behind. Neither of them spoke, but words didn't feel necessary. The bond between them, mended but fragile, said enough. Yet, even as the bond hummed faintly, a part of her hesitated. She was free of Lucas, but the scars he left behind hadn't faded. The village gates of Moonridge opened just after dawn. Pack members gathered near the entrance, their eyes widening as they caught sight of Amelia at Ethan's side. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some in relief, others in doubt. Amelia felt their gazes settle on her, and instinctively, her shoulders tensed. They didn't know. They hadn't seen the things Lucas made her do. The battles she led against them. Ethan glanced at her, sensing the shift in her heartbeat. His hand squeezed hers gently. "They don't blame you," he whispered, as if reading her thoughts. Amelia's lips tightened, but she didn't reply. Maybe they didn't. But she did. Dane was the first to approach. The beta stepped forward from the crowd, his sharp eyes scanning Amelia carefully. His posture was guarded, but there was no hostility, just quiet observation. "Welcome back," Dane said, nodding to her. Amelia managed a faint smile. "I wasn't sure I'd make it." Dane's gaze flicked to Ethan. He was. Ethan met Dane's eyes, his grip on Amelia's hand tightening slightly. "She's staying," Ethan said firmly, as if challenging anyone to object. Dane raised a brow but said nothing. Instead, he took a step back, gesturing toward the village. "Then let's get her settled." Amelia followed, but the weight pressing on her chest only grew heavier as they entered Moonridge. After a few minutes, they came to the residential yard of housing property. By afternoon, Amelia found herself standing at the edge of the cliffs, overlooking the village. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, but it didn't bring the peace she remembered. The view hadn't changed, but she had. She heard Ethan's footsteps before he appeared beside her, leaning against the old wooden railing. "You've been quiet," he said gently, his gaze drifting over the landscape. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, as if the chill in the air had seeped into her bones. "I feel out of place." Ethan's eyes softened. "You've been through a lot. No one expects you to bounce back overnight." "That's the problem," Amelia murmured, lowering her gaze. "I don't know if I can bounce back at all. I don't feel like the same person who left here." Ethan shifted, stepping closer. "You're not." Amelia's breath caught, and she turned to him, searching his face for judgment or disappointment. There was none. Ethan met her eyes, his voice steady but soft. "You can't be the same after everything that's happened. And that's okay." A lump formed in Amelia's throat, but she swallowed it down, her eyes burning. "I did things," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I hurt people. I hurt you." Ethan's hand brushed against her cheek, gently tilting her face toward him. "You weren't yourself, Amelia. You were fighting a war in your head that none of us could see." Her tears spilled over, but Ethan caught them with his thumb, brushing them away as if they weighed nothing. "I knew the real you was still in there," he said softly, "and you fought your way back. That's what matters." Amelia pressed her forehead against his chest, her shoulders trembling, as the emotions she had buried threatened to break free. Ethan's arms wrapped around her, holding her close, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself feel safe. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amelia sat by the fire in Ethan's cabin. The warmth seeped into her skin, but her heart still felt cold. Ethan sat across from her, watching quietly. "You don't have to stay here, you know," he said after a long silence. "If you need space, I'll understand." Amelia looked up, the flicker of the firelight reflecting in her eyes. "I don't want to leave." Ethan's expression softened. "Then don't." She hesitated before speaking again. "I don't know if I'll ever feel normal, or if I'll ever forgive myself." Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, but there was no force behind them. Just quiet certainty. "I'm not asking you to be the same person you were," he said. "And I'm not asking you to forgive yourself overnight." Amelia's chest tightened. "I'm just asking you to let me walk with you through it," Ethan added softly. Amelia held his gaze, the bond between them thrumming quietly beneath her skin. It wasn't gone. It never had been. After a long moment, she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Okay." Ethan smiled faintly, reaching across the space between them to take her hand in his. As their fingers intertwined, Amelia felt the warmth return. Slow, fragile, but real. And for the first time since returning to Moon Ridge, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could heal. Chapter 14. Healing the Luna. The morning sun poured through the windows of Ethan's cabin, filling the room with soft, golden light. The fire in the hearth had long since died, but the warmth from the bond between them lingered, gentle and fragile, like the first signs of spring after a brutal winter. Amelia sat at the edge of the bed, her legs tucked beneath her, staring out the window. Her eyes traced the tree line beyond the village, where the forest whispered with memories she wasn't ready to face. Ethan moved quietly around the room, pouring tea into 2 mismatched mugs. The sound of the liquid filling the cup was the only thing breaking the silence between them. It was a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't ask for words. When Ethan finally crossed the room and handed her the mug, Amelia's fingers brushed his as she took it. The brief contact sent warmth curling beneath her skin. "Thank you," she murmured. Ethan sat beside her, cradling his own mug. "You're welcome." They sat like that for a long while, the quiet filling the gaps between their unspoken thoughts. But even in the calm, Amelia could feel the weight pressing down. Later that day, Amelia found herself at the village's edge, standing on the cliffs that overlooked Moon Ridge. The wind tugged at her hair, and she let it, as if it could strip away the remnants of her time with Lucas. Ethan appeared beside her, his footsteps soft but deliberate. "You always used to come here," Ethan said quietly, his eyes scanning the horizon. When things got heavy, Amelia let out a soft breath, her arms crossing over her chest. "I used to think standing here made everything seem smaller. But it doesn't feel that way now." Ethan's gaze shifted to her, studying the tension in her posture. "You don't have to make sense of it all at once," he said gently. "It's going to take time." Amelia shook her head, her eyes narrowing at the distant woods. "I'm not sure time will fix this, Ethan." I feel different. His hand brushed lightly against her back, a subtle gesture, one that didn't demand anything from her. You are different, Ethan admitted, but that doesn't mean you're broken. Amelia glanced at him, her heart tightening. What if I am? Ethan's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. Then I'll help you pick up the pieces. Her breath hitched, and she turned to fully face him. You don't have to do this. I know I haven't made things easy for you. Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. You don't make anything easy, but that's never been a problem. Amelia managed a soft laugh, shaking her head. The bond between them hummed, steady and familiar, though there were still cracks along the edges. But Ethan didn't seem to mind the fractures, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. Over the following days, Ethan stayed close, but never too close. He didn't push her. Instead, he let Amelia lead the way, whether it was a quiet walk through the village or hours spent in silence by the fire. When the memories of Lucas's manipulation surfaced, Ethan never demanded she talk about it. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to remind her that she wasn't alone anymore. One evening, as they sat together by the lake, Amelia finally broke the silence. I still hear his voice sometimes, she admitted quietly, her fingers skimming the water's surface, telling me I'm not strong enough, that I belong to him. Ethan's hand slipped into hers beneath the stars, his grip steady but light. You don't, Ethan whispered, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. You never did. Amelia closed her eyes, leaning her head against his shoulder. I want to believe that, but it's hard. Ethan pressed his lips softly to her hair. Then I'll believe it enough for both of us. The simplicity of his words unraveled something deep within her, and for the first time, Lucas's voice felt distant, like an echo fading with the wind. Rapidly snapping back to focus, Lucas's voice felt distant and remote. One afternoon, Dane approached Ethan as he worked along the border. She's getting better, Dane noted, watching Amelia from a distance as she spoke to a few of the past's younger members. Ethan wiped his hands on his shirt, his gaze softening as he followed Dane's line of sight. She is, Ethan agreed. Dane crossed his arms, his tone dropping slightly. But you know the healing won't be linear. There will be moments when the past creeps in again. Ethan's expression didn't waver. I know. Dane glanced at him. And you're ready for that? Ethan's gaze lingered on Amelia, the woman he had nearly lost, but who fought her way back piece by piece. I'm ready for whatever it takes, Ethan said, his voice resolute. Dane smiled faintly. I figured as much. One evening, Amelia stood at the edge of the packhouse porch, watching the stars. Ethan found her there, his hands tucked in his pockets. You should be resting, he teased lightly. Amelia glanced over her shoulder, smirking. Says the man who never sleeps. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her, his gaze soft. I sleep, sometimes. Amelia shook her head, her smile fading as her gaze shifted back to the stars. Lucas took a lot from me, she said softly. But he didn't take this. Ethan arched a brow. The stars? She nodded. No matter what he did, he couldn't take the things I loved before him. I still love standing here. I still love the way the wind feels. And I still love you. Ethan's heart clenched, and he turned to face her fully. You never stopped, he asked quietly. Amelia shook her head. Not even for a second. Ethan stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek as he pressed his forehead to hers. The bond between them pulsed with warmth, no longer fragile, but strong. I love you too, Ethan whispered. And this time, there was no hesitation. No fear. just the quiet certainty that, no matter how long it took, they would heal. Together. Chapter 15. Acceptance. By the Pack. The morning sun bathed Moonridge in soft light, but the warmth that touched Amelia's skin felt distant. The village was alive, wolves sparring, children chasing each other near the pack house, and patrols preparing to scout the borders. Amelia watched from the steps of the pack house, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. Though the air buzzed with life, there was a distance between her and the pack house, a fragile gap that no one spoke of aloud. She wasn't sure if it was shame or uncertainty that kept them apart. But she felt it. She had led Lucas's wolves against them. She had fought beside the very man who tried to destroy their home. No matter how much Ethan reassured her, no matter how many nights she spent wrapped in his arms, not just in her heart, but in the eyes of the pack. Later that afternoon, Amelia joined the training grounds. Ethan was with Dane, sparring with the younger wolves under the watchful gaze of Elder Rowan. As Amelia approached, Dane caught sight of her first, pausing mid-swing. Ethan's attention followed, his eyes softening as he lowered his stance. Amelia hesitated at the edge of the clearing. But she didn't. She stepped back. Taking a breath, she stepped forward. "Mind if I join?" Amelia asked, her voice light but uncertain. A few of the younger wolves exchanged glances. Dane arched a brow, his usual smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "That depends. You planning on using that blade against us, or for us this time?" The words were teasing, but Amelia heard the edge beneath them. She met his gaze without flinching. "For you. Always." The answer seemed to catch Dane off guard, but Ethan stepped in, his voice steady. "She's one of us," Ethan said, his eyes scanning the pack. "And she's here to prove it." Dane held Amelia's gaze for a long moment, before finally nodding. "All right," he said, stepping back and twirling his practice blade. "Let's see if Lucas left you any skills worth keeping." Amelia smiled faintly, lifting one of the wooden swords from the rack. The tension didn't fade, but the unspoken challenge had been accepted. The first strike came fast. Dane swung wide, and Amelia ducked beneath the blade, her wolf sharpening her reflexes. She pivoted, striking back with a quick swipe that Dane barely parried in time. The pack circled around them, their murmurs soft but curious. Dane grinned. "Not bad." "Not trying to impress you," Amelia shot back, her heart pounding. She struck again, forcing Dane to step back, their blades clashing in a rapid flurry of strikes. Ethan stood just outside the circle, his arms crossed as he observed silently, his expression unreadable. Amelia pushed harder, driving Dane toward the edge of the training circle. Her wolf surged beneath the surface, a reminder of the strength Lucas had tried to exploit. But now, that strength belonged to her. The final strike knocked Dane's blade from his hand, sending it spinning into the dirt. Amelia pressed the tip of her sword lightly against his chest, her breathing heavy. The clearing fell quiet. Dane's eyes flicked between the blade and Amelia's steady gaze. Slowly he grinned. "All right, I admit it. You're terrifying." A soft laugh rippled through the pack. Amelia lowered the blade, stepping back as Dane retrieved his weapon. He clapped her shoulder lightly. "I guess Ethan wasn't exaggerating," Ethan smirked. "I rarely do." Over the next few days, Amelia continued to train alongside the pack. At first, the wolves kept their distance, observing from the edges. But as the days passed, they began to open up. Slowly but surely, she joined patrols, sparred with the younger wolves, and hunted alongside Ethan, quietly proving herself in the ways that mattered most. Yet, even as trust began to rebuild, the shadow of Lucas lingered. It was Elder Rowan who addressed it one evening by the fire. Rousing in the darkness? Amelia's strong, Rowan said, watching as Amelia worked with two of the pack's apprentices nearby. But strength alone doesn't heal wounds. Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on Amelia. I know, Rowan's gaze shifted. The pack needs to hear it from her. Words are powerful, Ethan. Sometimes more than claws. Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't argue. That night, Ethan led Amelia to the gathering circle. The entire pack had assembled under the full moon, a communal fire burning brightly in the center of the clearing. Amelia's heart thudded as wolves turned to face her, their expressions expectant but cautious. Ethan stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. You don't have to do this alone, he whispered. Amelia exhaled slowly, stepping forward. The firelight danced across her face, and for the first time since returning, she met the gaze of every wolf gathered around her. I know many of you still question why I'm here, Amelia began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. I don't blame you. Silence stretched through the circle, but no one interrupted. I led Lucas's wolves against you. I stood on the wrong side, because I believed I had no choice. But I was wrong. Her gaze flickered to Ethan, briefly, warmth blooming in her chest. You may not trust me yet, Amelia continued, but I promise to earn that trust, not as Ethan's mate, as one of you. As someone willing to fight for this pack, for my family. A few wolves exchanged glances, murmuring willingly with one another. Someone willing to face risk. Rowan watched her carefully, his eyes narrowing as if reading the weight behind her words. Dane was the first to step forward, his voice light but firm. If she can knock me flat, she can stay. Laughter spread through the pack, easing some of the tension. One by one, wolves nodded in quiet acceptance. Amelia felt the bond with the pack begin to mend, not fully, but enough to take the first step toward healing. Ethan's hand found hers, his fingers intertwining with hers beneath the stars. You did good, he whispered. Amelia smiled softly, leaning into him as the warmth of the fire filled the space between them. She wasn't just Ethan's mate, she was home. Chapter 16. A New Dawn. The sounds of hammers and axes echoed gold and amber toward the pack house. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, and the scent of pine and earth hung fresh in the morning air. The sounds of hammers and axes echoed softly through the clearing as the pack worked to rebuild what Lucas's attacks had damaged. Amelia stood at the edge of the village, watching as the pack prepared to ready the pack house. The air felt lighter than it had in weeks, but beneath the calm lay the scars of the battles they had fought. Thinking of running off already? Amelia turned to find Dane approaching, a bundle of supplies slung over his shoulder. His familiar smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were warm. Not running, Amelia replied with a faint smile. Just watching. Dane followed her gaze toward the village. You did good, you know. The pack's starting to come around. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cool breeze sweep over her skin. Maybe, but I still feel like I'm trying to find my place again. Dane arched a brow. You're Ethan's mate. That is your place. She shook her head. It's more than that. I need to stand on my own too. Dane studied her for a long moment before nodding. Then let them see you lead. It worked for Ethan. Amelia glanced back at the wolves working in the clearing, the flicker of determination stirring in her chest. Claire. He was right. Somehow they hadn't taken the doctor's advice. He was right. By midday, Amelia had joined the rebuilding efforts. She worked alongside the others, hauling timber, reinforcing the fences along the border, and helping patch the holes left in the watchtower. At first, the other wolves were hesitant, watching her more than speaking to her. But gradually, the distance between them began to fade. Darius passed her a hammer, wordlessly gesturing toward the damaged beams. "Looks like you could use another pair of hands," Amelia said, stepping up beside him. Darius didn't glance at her. "Just don't drop the hammer." A faint smile tugged at Amelia's lips. Later that evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, the pack gathered in the main clearing. Ethan stood at the center, addressing the pack as the final reinforcements on the village's perimeter were completed. Amelia lingered at the edge of the crowd, listening quietly. "This pack has survived more than most," Ethan said. His voice tried to break us, tried to take away what we've built here. But he failed. A ripple of agreement passed through the pack, and Ethan's eyes softened as they found Amelia across the clearing. "But we're not the same as we were before," Ethan continued. "We're stronger, because we've fought for each other, and we'll keep fighting. For this pack, for our home, and for the one standing beside us." Dane stepped forward with a grin. "That's a fancy way of saying we're too stubborn to lose." Laughter echoed through the clearing, and even Amelia couldn't suppress a smile. But as the pack's laughter faded, Elder Rowan rose from his seat near the fire. His gaze settled on Amelia, and the hum of conversation died down. "You've returned to us, Amelia," Rowan said, his voice calm but powerful, "and the pack has accepted you back into its fold. But it's time for you to accept it too." Amelia's chest tightened, but she stepped forward, feeling the weight of the pack's attention shift toward her. She met Rowan's gaze steadily. "I'm ready." The elder studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Then stand with Ethan." As Luna of this pack, a soft murmur spread through the crowd, but no one objected. Ethan extended his hand toward Amelia, and without hesitation, she took it. As their fingers intertwined, the bond between them flared to life, stronger than it had ever been. That night, Moonridge celebrated under the full moon. Wolves danced beneath the stars, fires burned bright, and the echoes of laughter filled the air. The weight that had lingered over the village for so long seemed to finally lift, replaced by something lighter. Hope. Amelia sat with Ethan near the fire, her head resting on his shoulder as the flames crackled softly before them. "Did you ever think we'd make it back here?" she asked quietly. Ethan's arm tightened around her. "I always knew we would." She smiled faintly. "Even after everything." Ethan turned toward her, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His eyes, calm, unwavering, met hers. "Especially after everything," he whispered. Amelia's heart swelled as she leaned into him, the warmth of the fire and the bond between them grounding her. Lucas's shadow was gone, and in its place stood a new dawn, a beginning. For the first time in what felt like forever, Amelia felt at peace. Chapter 17. Rising as Luna. The first light of dawn stretched across Moonridge, casting long shadows over the village as the morning fog lifted. The pack gathered silently in the main clearing, their breath curling in the cool air. Today felt different. A quiet anticipation hung over them. At the center of the clearing, Ethan stood tall, his gaze calm, yet unyielding. Beside him, Amelia felt the weight of expectation pressing down, but there was no fear in her chest, not this time. Today wasn't about proving herself. It was about accepting the place she had fought to reclaim. Rowan, the village elder, stood near the ceremonial fire, his eyes glowing faintly beneath his hood. He raised his hand, signaling for silence as the last murmurs faded into the rustle of wind through the trees. Amelia stepped forward, standing beside Ethan beneath the full gaze of the pack. Her heart pounded, but she kept her head high. "You all know why we're gathered here," Rowan began, his voice steady, resonating over the pack. "We stand not to mourn what was lost, but to celebrate what we've reclaimed. Moonridge survived because of those willing to fight for it. And for each other." Rowan's eyes flickered to Amelia. "And today, we recognize the one who returns to us, not as a lost soul, but as the heart of this pack." Amelia's breath caught, but she didn't look away. "She stands before us now," Rowan continued, "to take her rightful place at Ethan's side, as Luna of Moonridge." A ripple of approval swept through the gathered wolves, soft but unmistakable. Ethan turned toward Amelia, his green eyes glowing faintly with warmth and pride. His hand reached for hers, and she took it without hesitation, grounding her in the moment. Rowan gestured for Amelia to kneel before him. She lowered herself onto one knee, her head bowed respectfully as Rowan stepped closer, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. "Amelia Blackwell," Rowan said, his voice low but powerful. "Do you vow to lead this pack with strength and compassion, to protect it as fiercely as you love it?" "I do," Amelia answered without hesitation. Rowan's hand remained steady. "Do you accept your role as Luna, standing beside your alpha, not as his shadow, but as his equal?" "I do." The fire crackled, casting flickers of light across her face as Rowan stepped back. "Then rise, Amelia, as Luna of Moonridge." Amelia lifted her head, rising to her feet. Ethan's eyes never left her, his pride evident in the soft smile tugging at the corner of his lips. As she turned to face the pack, the weight she had carried since returning began to lift. This was where she belonged. The pack howled as one, their voices echoing through the forest, sealing the moment beneath the rising sun. Later that evening, Amelia stood atop the cliffs overlooking Moonridge. The village glowed beneath her, fires burning steadily as the pack celebrated well into the night. Ethan approached, his footsteps light against the rocky path. Without a word, he slid his arm around her waist, pulling her gently against his side. "You're quiet," he said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. Amelia leaned into him, watching the village below. "I've never felt so much at peace, and so overwhelmed at the same time." Ethan chuckled, his breath warm against her skin. "That's what being Luna feels like. Get used to it." She smiled faintly, but her gaze turned serious. "Do you think they trust me now? Completely?" Ethan tilted her chin, meeting her eyes. "They trust you because they see who you are now. And so do I." Amelia's heart swelled, and for the first time, the lingering doubt that had haunted her since Lucas's downfall faded into the wind. She wasn't just Ethan's mate, she was his equal. Luna of Moonridge. Together, they would rebuild, protect, and lead the pack into whatever future lay ahead. As long as they stood side by side, nothing could break them. Chapter 18, Epilogue. Together under the moon. The moon hung low and full over Moonridge, casting its silver glow across the village and the dense forest beyond. The soft rustle of leaves whispered through the trees, and the distant howls of the pack echoed across the valley, harmonizing beneath the night sky. Amelia stood on the balcony of the pack house, the cool night air brushing against her skin. Below her, the village was quiet, save for the occasional flicker of torches lining the pathways. Moonridge had settled into peace. A peace hard-earned. Ethan stepped out onto the balcony behind her, his warmth pressing against her back, as he wrapped his arms around her waist. His chin rested lightly on her shoulder, and Amelia leaned into him with a contented sigh. "You're still awake," Ethan murmured, his breath hot against her ear. Amelia smiled softly. "So are you." "I couldn't sleep," he admitted, tightening his embrace. "I keep thinking about how different things feel now." Amelia glanced down at the village, the steady hum of life beneath them, a reminder of how far they'd come. "It feels quiet," she said, thoughtfully. Ethan kissed her temple. "The quiet is good. We fought for it." And they had. Lucas's shadow no longer loomed over Moonridge. The pack had healed, and with each passing day, the bond between them grew stronger. Darius had taken over the remaining rogues, integrating those who wanted to stay into the pack. Those who didn't had quietly disappeared into the wilderness. But the scars remained, a reminder of what they'd overcome. "You led them well," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with quiet pride. Amelia's heart warmed, but she shook her head with a soft chuckle. "You led them. I just tried not to get in the way." Ethan turned her gently to face him, his eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You don't give yourself enough credit. They trust you, Amelia. I trust you." She lifted her hand to his cheek, her thumb brushing lightly over the faint scar that traced along his jaw. A mark from the final fight with Lucas. "I never thought we'd get here," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan's gaze softened. "Neither did I. But we did." Their bond thrummed softly between them, the invisible thread connecting their hearts stronger than ever. Amelia felt it. The certainty, the love, the unshakable trust that had carried them through the darkest moments. Ethan's fingers brushed through her hair as he lowered his head, capturing her lips in a gentle kiss beneath the moon. The world melted away in that moment. There was no past, no scars, no lingering doubts. Only them. When they finally parted, Ethan pressed his forehead to hers, his arms still locked around her. "We've rebuilt this place together," he whispered. "And we'll lead it together, no matter what comes next." Amelia smiled, threading her fingers through his. "I like the sound of that." Together they stood beneath the stars, the moon casting its glow over them like a silent blessing. Moonridge was more than a village. It was home, and as long as they stood side by side, the future was theirs to shape